My name's Laura Hussey, I'm a creative director and partner here, and I've been here for 10 years.
And I'm Rhodes, and I'm a creative director here at Someone, and I've been here for 2 years.
Well, I think it's pretty immediate. There's a bit of a kind of buzz that goes around immediately by everybody. So if everybody kind of cottons onto it, then you get an immediate feeling that everyone's feeling the same thing. I think also when you start taking it further and everyone starts chipping in and going, oh, you could do this or you could do this, and it starts kind of rolling on. I was going to use a really awful analogy of a bit like cayenne pepper. I have a weird reaction to that, and it's a bit like it kind of hits you and then 20 minutes later you can't think of anything else and it just explodes throughout the studio, and yeah, it's kind of contagious. So I think there's no real way of telling it, but I think it's a knock-on effect of discussion that happens around it.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. And it is definitely that snowball effect. There is kind of like a weird buzz when you can see that there's a really good idea out there. But I suppose we need to establish what a big idea is as well.
Yeah.
So I think a big idea is something that both answers a question, but then asks another question. So you can answer the brief, but then what else can it do? So something which is kind of provocative and pushes further.
Also, I think if everyone kind of goes, oh, you can't do that, like that's brilliant, that kind of feels like a big idea. If everyone sees it and goes, yeah, that's brilliant, that could work right now, that's probably a bit too safe. You can always make a scary idea a little bit safer, but the ones that people are a little bit shocked by or think that they've pushed it too far, that's probably a big idea as well. I imagine I will say the same as Simon, but I guess it's kind of a kit of parts. We use lots of different ways of explaining it to clients, and different clients will kind of latch on a different way of describing it, but it's kind of your kit of parts, it's your toolbox, it's your operating system, it's the stuff that, flexes around the main idea and can be completely different in each kind of type of media that you're using. And I guess it's ultimately something that's really flexible, but that inherently talks about the brand that you are. But flex is the biggest thing, I think, that a brand world should be. Yeah,
and you've got the classic Gary Holt comment of, if you cover up the logo, you still need to know what the brand is, and that's what a brand world does. So it equips you with everything you'll ever need. So you don't just need to see the logo.
And again, a big idea will be able to be taken into all those different assets and those different parts. A smaller idea will be limited, and that's probably where you end up not having a brand world, but having a logo and a typeface and a colour. If it's a big idea, then you think, great, well, music would therefore be this, or the interactive principles would therefore be this, because it's such a big idea and that core idea is so strong. I think as well, that's partly our job to make sure that the ideas keep a kind of a steer on where they're headed, what the long-term gain is. And I think when we were talking about the kind of big strategic part of the project that the client might be very interested in, and then the designers also wanting to do something very beautiful and push boundaries, it's kind of, we're that kind of middlemen almost to try and make sure that it doesn't just go off on a tangent. And so kind of protecting it is making sure that it still has that rudder of where it's headed. And even though this looks like a great, little river to go off all these rapids, and there might be some fun stuff down there, how do we make sure that it's kind of still on course? And I think that's kind of protecting it.
Yeah.
And again, when you've got multiple other agencies that you might be working on, and being the lead agency for that, it's making sure that collectively we all kind of stay on track. And little bits can be fantastic and add a bit of magic on the way. But yeah, keeping that rudder, I think, is quite good.
I suppose it comes back down to big ideas again. It's just like keeping the big idea at the heart, at the core, and then just staying true to that idea. Being nice.
I was going to say, the biggest thing in all of our jobs, I think, is knowing how to read people and to kind of be a friend, which sounds awful, but as in different friends are going to want different stuff from you and are going to want to behave differently. And the worst thing is to have kind of one rule for all your clients and behave. I think you have to kind of be a bit of a chameleon. So one client is going to want to come and have a load of fun and, have all the responsibility taken away from them. And another's going to want to work with you right from the start and feel ownership on the project or the brand. And it's kind of knowing that. And over time, that can change as well. So somebody that initially is quite potentially standoffish or wants you to lead, then kind of builds up that relationship. And it's just reading the room. It's reading when they want to do that and then you reacting to it, and not overstepping the mark and being best buddies if they don't want to be, but going for a drink if they do.
Yeah, and I think it's about, you're exactly right, and it's not about being forceful if you do think you have a great idea. It should be collaboration, you stood together, and you work together. I mean, a client is an expert in their field, we're an expert in our field, so I think the best thing to do is just pool your resources and just work together.
Yeah, and they just trust you over time. If you get it wrong, then they're not going to be a long-term client. So the fact that you just keep learning along with them as well. It's lovely if you're about to do a new project with the same client, and you start, reminiscing about the last project and what went wrong and what went right, and kind of putting your hands up to those things. And they appreciate that honesty that you wouldn't get with a brand new client maybe. So it's all about trust.
I think it's really, really easy to design an identity and simply answer a brief, but it's really difficult to push it further and create a really cohesive brand world. So they are all different. But I mean, how would you?
I think also so you kind of imagine the best case study for your brand world, and it all works well and it's all kind of fitting together. It's almost good to think, well, what would happen with this brand world if something disastrous happened, or something went wrong? Would this brand world fall apart, or could it cope with that? So it's not always kind of telling the story you want to tell. What happens when something maybe bad happens, or how would you deal with it? If it's a brand all about balloons and celebration and something awful happens, how are you going to tell it if it's all about that kind of concept? So I guess it's trying to preempt every eventuality, but ultimately it should be flexible. So any brand world should work if you're doing it properly, and you've got different assets to play with and dial up the different parts of it.